Romans 8:18. The sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is going to be revealed. My child, I know what happened. I know what they said. I know what they did. I know the betrayal. I know the disappointment. I know the nights you cried without telling anyone. I know the moments you sat alone asking, why did this happen to me? And today, before we go any further, I want you to hear this clearly. What happened to you did not surprise God. The betrayal surprised you. The loss surprised you. The rejection surprised you. But it did not surprise God. Because while people were making decisions, God was already preparing a plan. While people were closing doors, God was already preparing another entrance. While people thought they were hurting your future, God was protecting it. My child, the enemy wants you to keep staring at what you lost. God wants you to start looking at what is coming, because what is coming is greater than what left. There are people listening to this message right now who are carrying wounds that nobody sees. You learned how to smile through pain. You learned how to function while broken. You learned how to keep moving while hurting. And because you've become so good at hiding your pain, people assume you're okay. But you're not. Not completely. There are parts of your heart that still ache, parts that still question, parts that still wonder why. And God is speaking directly to those places today, because healing begins where honesty begins. And God already knows the truth. He knows the part of you that still hurts, the part of you that still misses what was lost, the part of you that still struggles to trust again. And He has not rejected that part of you. He wants to heal it. Joseph's betrayal. Joseph knew betrayal, not from strangers, from family. The people who should have protected him became the source of his pain. Imagine how confusing that must have been. Imagine the questions. Imagine the hurt. Imagine the loneliness. And maybe that's why some of you connect with Joseph, because your deepest wounds did not come from enemies. They came from people you loved, people you trusted, people you never expected would hurt you. And because of that pain, fear entered your life. Fear of trusting again. Fear of being disappointed again. Fear of being abandoned again. But Joseph eventually discovered something powerful. People can delay God's plan, but they cannot destroy God's plan. What God has spoken over your life remains true, even after betrayal, even after rejection, even after loss, even after heartbreak, because God's promise is stronger than human failure. Genesis 50:20. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Think about that. The same event, two intentions, human intention, God's intention. People saw pain, God saw purpose. People saw defeat, God saw preparation. People saw a prison, God saw a palace. And perhaps the same thing is true in your life. What looks like an ending may actually be preparation for a beginning. What feels like rejection may actually be redirection. What feels like loss may actually be protection. Because God sees things you cannot see. David's rejection. When Samuel came looking for the future king, David wasn't even invited. His own family overlooked him, ignored him, forgot about him. Imagine how that felt. Yet the very person everyone overlooked became the person God chose. My child, never mistake being overlooked by people for being overlooked by God. People may ignore you. People may underestimate you. People may fail to see your value. But God sees what others miss. God sees your heart. God sees your faithfulness. God sees your character, and His opinion matters more than anyone else's. Psalm 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. My child, some wounds need more than time. They need God. Some pain is too deep for human wisdom, too deep for distractions, too deep for positive thinking, but it is never too deep for God's healing power. And today God is reaching into places you have hidden from everyone else, places where disappointment still lives, places where fear still lingers, places where old memories still hurt, and He is bringing healing, not because you earned it, because He loves you. Isaiah 61:3, to give them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, and the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness. My child, the pain you carry is real. I am not asking you to pretend it didn't happen. I am not asking you to ignore the wound. I am not asking you to smile through something that broke your heart, because healing does not begin with denial. Healing begins with truth, and the truth is, what happened hurt. The betrayal hurt. The rejection hurt. The abandonment hurt. The disappointment hurt. The prayer that seemed unanswered hurt. The dream that fell apart hurt. And because it hurt, part of you became afraid. Afraid of hoping again. Afraid of trusting again. Afraid of believing again. Because you do not want to be hurt again. But my child, if you allow fear to build walls around your heart, those same walls that keep pain out will also keep blessings out. And the enemy knows that. That is why he wants your past to become your prison. Because if he can keep you trapped in yesterday's pain, you will never walk into tomorrow's promise. Job's story. Job understood pain in a way few people ever will. Everything changed. Everything. The life he knew disappeared. The future he expected vanished. The security he relied on was shaken. And there were moments when Job could not understand what God was doing. Maybe that's where some of you are today. You don't understand. You don't understand why the relationship ended. You don't understand why the opportunity disappeared. You don't understand why the prayer seems delayed. You don't understand why life changed so quickly. And because you don't understand, fear keeps trying to write the story. But fear is not the author. God is. And while Job could not see the entire picture, God could. While Job saw loss, God saw restoration. While Job saw pain, God saw purpose. While Job saw the storm, God saw the ending. And eventually, the ending was greater than the suffering. My child, never judge the entire story by one painful chapter. God is still writing. Jeremiah 30:17, for I will restore health to you and heal you of your wounds, declares the Lord. Notice what God says. Not I might heal, not I will think about healing, not healing is impossible. He says, I will heal, because healing is part of God's nature. Restoration is part of God's character, and the wounds you hide from people are not hidden from God. The disappointment you rarely talk about is not unknown to God. The heartbreak you carry every day is not invisible to God. He sees it, He understands it, and He is already working on it. My child, there are some people listening right now who feel forgotten. Not by God, by people. You gave your best. You loved sincerely. You helped when nobody else would. You sacrificed. You cared. Yet somehow, you ended up feeling alone. And that loneliness has been heavy, because loneliness has a way of making people question their value. It whispers, if you mattered, they would have stayed. If you mattered, they would have appreciated you. If you mattered, things would be different. But those lies are not truth. Your value does not come from who stayed. Your value comes from who created you. And the God who created you calls you loved, chosen, valuable, worthy, not because of what people think, because of who you are in Him. David in the cave. David spent years hiding in caves. Imagine that. a future king living like a fugitive, a man carrying God's promise while sleeping in uncertainty. David could have believed fear. He could have assumed God forgot him. He could have given up. But David learned something powerful. God's promises do not expire because circumstances become difficult. The cave did not cancel the crown. The delay did not cancel the destiny. The waiting did not cancel the promise. And perhaps God wants you to hear the same thing today. The pain did not cancel your purpose. The rejection did not cancel your future. The betrayal did not cancel God's plan. The delay did not cancel your blessing. What God spoke over your life still stands. Psalm 27:13. I remain confident of this. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. David said that while he was still waiting, not after, while. That is faith. Faith is not believing after the miracle. Faith is believing before the miracle. Faith is trusting God while the situation is still unresolved. Faith is expecting goodness before evidence appears. And that kind of faith changes everything. My child, the enemy wants you focused on what happened. God wants you focused on what is coming. The enemy wants you replaying old pain. God wants you preparing for new purpose. The enemy wants you looking backward. God wants you moving forward. And today, you have a choice. You can continue carrying the wound, or you can place it into God's hands, because the burden is heavy, but God's shoulders are stronger. And the moment you surrender what hurt you, God begins restoring what the pain tried to steal. Romans 8:37. In all these things we are more than conquerors through Him who loved us. Not victims, not defeated, not abandoned, more than conquerors. That is who you are. Not because life has been easy, because God has been faithful, and His faithfulness has carried you farther than you realize. My child, what happened to you was not the end. The betrayal was not the end. The rejection was not the end. The heartbreak was not the end. The loss was not the end. Because God always has another chapter, and the chapter He is writing now will be stronger than the chapter that hurt you. Trust Him, even here, especially here, because restoration is closer than you think. Script #2, Part 3. God says, I saw what they did to you. Now watch what I do. Joel 2:25. I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten. My child, there is something the enemy never wanted you to understand. Your story did not end when they hurt you. It did not end when they left. It did not end when they rejected you. It did not end when they betrayed your trust. Because God specializes in writing beautiful endings after painful chapters. And right now, even though you cannot see everything clearly, God is already working on the next chapter of your life. The chapter where healing begins. The chapter where peace returns. The chapter where confidence grows again. The chapter where purpose becomes clearer than pain. Because God never intended for your wound to become your identity. You are not the betrayal. You are not the rejection. You are not the disappointment. You are not the mistake. You are a child of God, and God is not finished with you. There are people listening right now who secretly wonder if they will ever feel normal again, ever trust again, ever love again, ever believe again, because pain changed something inside you. It made you cautious. It made you guarded. It made you afraid of being vulnerable. And while that response is understandable, it is not where God wants you to stay. Because fear may protect you from temporary pain, but it can also prevent future blessings. My child, do not allow the people who hurt you to continue controlling your life after they are gone. Do not allow yesterday's wound to steal tomorrow's joy. Do not allow your past pain to become your future prison, because God is calling you forward, not backward. Peter's failure. Peter understood regret. Peter understood failure. Peter understood the pain of looking back and wishing he could change something. He promised Jesus loyalty. He promised faithfulness. He promised he would never leave. Yet when pressure arrived, Peter denied him 3 times. Can you imagine the guilt, the shame, the disappointment? Imagine waking up every day remembering your worst mistake. Some of you know exactly what that feels like, because your greatest pain did not come from what others did. It came from what you did. The decision you regret, the opportunity you lost, the mistake you wish you could undo. And because of that, you have been carrying guilt for far too long. But listen carefully. Peter's failure did not disqualify him, and your failure does not disqualify you either. Because grace is bigger than your mistake, God's mercy is bigger than your regret, and God's purpose is bigger than your past. John 21:17. Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep." Think about that. Jesus did not remind Peter of his failure. Jesus reminded Peter of his purpose. Because God is more interested in your future than your past. The enemy keeps pointing backward. God keeps pointing forward. The enemy says, "Look what you did." God says, "Look what I can still do." The enemy says, "You're finished." God says, "I'm just getting started." And perhaps someone listening today desperately needs to hear that. You are not finished. Not even close. Joseph's promotion. There came a moment when everything changed for Joseph. One conversation, one opportunity, one divine appointment, and suddenly the prison that had defined his life was behind him. Think about how quickly God can change circumstances. Years of waiting, years of wondering, years of confusion. Then one day, the breakthrough arrived, not because Joseph forced it, not because Joseph manipulated it, not because Joseph worried enough, because God's timing arrived. My child, you have no idea what God can do in one day, one phone call, one opportunity, one meeting, one conversation, one answered prayer, one open door. The God who lifted Joseph from prison to palace still works miracles today. Never underestimate what God can do suddenly. Because while you have been counting the days, God has been preparing the moment.